I still remember the exact shape of the notification bubble. Not the words, those dissolved later into a slurry of meanings, but the shape. A gray capsule on a dim screen, a little preview edge peeking out from under the lock icon. I'd woken at 2:17 a.m. because the upstairs neighbor's washing machine went into spin cycle and the pipes in our place sang like a restless animal. I reached for water, saw the light of her phone, and then I did the thing I'd always said I wouldn't. I looked. People will say that's on me, privacy and all that. I agree to a point. But if you've never lived with a question that hums in the ribs like a trapped mosquito, you might not understand how a person can act against his own principles at 2:17 a.m. in a kitchen where the fridge fan sounds exactly like a whispered warning. What I saw wasn't even the worst thing, no explicit photo, no naked "I love you." It was smaller, more lethal. A name I didn't recognize and the line, "I wish you were here. Mondays feel easier with you." I stood there with my hand still around the glass, feeling the sweat on the outside like it was my own. I didn't scroll. I didn't need to. That one sentence collapsed a lot of furniture in my mind. I'm 38, 11 years married. We met at a friend's birthday where the cake tasted like a cloud. I remember that more than our first kiss, as awful as that sounds, the cake, the exact way she laughed when the candle sparks wouldn't go out, how she cupped her hands like a windbreak. We built our life like tired students working on a group project after hours, some deadline always looming, a feeling we were doing something that would matter later. 2 jobs. Weeknight grocery runs. A plant that kept trying to die and kept failing at it, a comic relief character in a story that took itself too seriously. If you're reading this for a tidy villain, you won't find one. She wasn't a monster. I'm not a saint. The first real crack, if I'm honest, wasn't a message. It was the way we became curators of each other's moods instead of co-authors in the same scene. I learned when to make tea without being asked. She learned how to step over my silence as if it were a sleeping dog. Comfort is a quiet killer. It doesn't stab, it anesthetizes. When she woke up and came into the kitchen, I was still standing there like a man who forgot what the room was for. She saw the phone in my hand and did not gasp. That told me a lot. It was like watching someone recognize the end of a song long before the last note. "Can we talk?" I said. She nodded, and we sat at the table that wobbled unless you found its good corner. I'd always joked that our table had a personality. That morning it was more like a lie detector. Every tiny wobble felt like a judgment. I asked who he was. She told me the truth, or enough of it. They'd met at a conference. He made her feel seen in a way that she missed. It had been texting more than anything else, plus one kiss in a hotel lobby bar that she insisted felt like watching someone else's hands. I wanted a ledger. I wanted a number of times, a count of how many Mondays, a list of nouns to hate. But what I had was the gray bubble and the words, "I wish you were here." It seemed small and unkillable, like a stain that looks faint until you try to wash it. I didn't yell. I come from a family that argues like a legal brief, bullet points, exhibits, the occasional dramatic sigh for the court record. She cried, but not the kind of crying that asks for rescue. Her face looked like mine must have, a person who realizes they've been carrying a bag of rocks by mistake, and then feels stupid for the pain in their arms. There were practicalities. Do we tell our parents? Do we take a break? What does a break even mean when you share shelf space and laundry cycles and the muscle memory of someone else's toothbrush rhythm? She offered to delete him, block him, change numbers. I didn't know whether I wanted punishment, or a guarantee of the impossible, that the idea of him could be erased. We decided on therapy, not because we believed in immediate healing but because either of us trusted ourselves not to turn into 2 ghosts haunting the same apartment. The first therapist listened the way good baristas look at you when you try to describe a drink you don't know the name of. He asked about the start of us, not the end. He asked us to list things we were angry about that weren't about texting. I said I was tired of being a household project manager nobody hired. She said she was tired of feeling like the only person who noticed when the laundry went from needs doing to a problem. We sounded like a broken duo trying to tune instruments in different rooms. A week after the first session, I broke down in a grocery store. I had come for coffee filters, and the aisle where they kept them was under renovation. A paper taped to a shelf with painter's tape. "Coffee filters temporarily moved to aisle 12, thanks for your patience." I stood there laughing, then crying, then both. I wanted a note like that for my life. "Essential functions temporarily moved. Please find them 2 aisles over." A woman in a red badge asked if I was okay, and I told her I was just allergic to change. She offered me a tissue that smelled like oranges, and I carried that smell home as if it were a clue. I did not stay out of spite. She did not stay out of guilt. We stayed because we still recognized each other under the wreckage. We made rules. We agreed on transparency for a while, not as surveillance but as training wheels. We went on walks without our phones on purpose and called it manual mode. We tried a weekly ritual where we asked each other 3 questions. What did you need from me this week? What surprised you? What are we ignoring because it seems small? We were clumsy. We were also, unexpectedly, honest in new ways. I told her I missed how she used to narrate her day in nonsense detail. She told me she missed how I used to send her links to ridiculous apartments we could never afford, just to imagine out loud. We did not tell our families the specifics. We said we'd had a rough patch, which felt like describing a car crash as traffic. A close friend guessed. He's the kind of friend who reads your texts like sheet music. He hears the rest between the notes. He told me something I hated then and love now. "The hardest part isn't that she chose him. It's that she felt like you weren't an option for the feeling she needed." It reframed nothing and everything at once. One night, the plant was doing well again, improbably. We sat on the balcony with mugs and the sky was a color I couldn't name. She said, "If you want to leave, I'll help you pack. I won't fight you." There was no performance in it. It was like an open door. I sat there with that door open for a long time. Then I said, "I don't want to leave. I want to know you again." It wasn't forgiveness. It was a decision to stay for the work. Months later, I can't give you a Hollywood epilogue. There was no cinematic cut from tears to a slow dance. But there are quiet edits. She changed her number, yes. We stopped sleeping with our phones within reach. I learned to say, "I'm hurt," without turning it into a thesis on morality. She learned to sit next to my anger without sprinting ahead to a solution I wasn't ready to accept. The ghost of that gray bubble still appears in my mind sometimes, like a pop-up ad from an app one can't find to uninstall. But it's quieter now. It has to deal with new data. A few weeks ago, I made coffee at 6 in the morning and realized the filters were in aisle 12 now, metaphorically speaking. We had moved them. She came into the kitchen with pillow lines on her face and said, "You're up early." I said, "Couldn't sleep." And she put her hand on my back the way you steady a ladder someone else is on. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't absolution. It was contact, familiar and new. The plant in the corner stretched toward the window as if someone had told it a joke. "I'm not here to persuade you to stay when you should go. I'm here to say that sometimes the lesser miracle is the one where people remain in the room, even with the wreckage." Monday came again. It felt marginally easier, not because of anyone else's name showing up on a screen, but because we're learning, slowly, stubbornly, to be here for each other in ways that don't require someone else to vanish. It's not a happily ever after. It's a happily for now, rebuilt with tools I didn't know we owned. And sometimes, when the upstairs neighbor's machine rattles the pipes at night, I wait for the noise to pass and reach for her hand instead of the phone.